most business owners haven't got a degree in business. They haven't spent years researching and upskilling in business. They've done it in their field. People think they're in an organization and think, I can do this better. They've got a passion, they've got a skill, they've got a trade, and quite often they can. But actually, there's so much around actually running a business that takes so much time and energy. If you are starting a business because you want to make money, forget it. I'd got my purpose. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the impact that I wanted to have on people. And I just thought, let's just go for it. But that's not to say I haven't made my own mistakes.
Hi, Maddie. Welcome to the show today. Let's start, I suppose, by learning a bit about you. What do I need to know?
Okay, so I recently went self-employed at the beginning of the year. So I work with companies that are trying to grow, scale, and exit. Um, so that's what I do now. I'm also a mom. I've got a 13-year-old son, and yeah, I don't know, I don't know what else to say.
So I guess lots of businesses say they want to grow and scale, maybe less so on the exit because people don't start or a lot of people don't start a business to exit, although getting yourself in a position that you could exit is always a great position to be in. But how do you support people who are looking to scale?
So interestingly, that's the first place we start is actually what are they looking to achieve? What is that long-term gain um, or aspiration? And from my perspective, it's looking at what the individual wants. So whether it's a single founder or owner or they're part of a consortium, they've got multiple directors, board members, etc. But the first thing is, where are we actually looking to get to? So looking at exploring what options may be available. And it might be that they're not actually in a position to say, yeah, we're really, really clear and know exactly what we do want to do, but we can rule out some of the things that they don't want to do. I often have conversations where people are saying they want to build this huge empire, but they only want to work 2 days a week.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get that balance and alignment with what's feasible, what the options might be, and then being realistic to kind of say, well, yeah, with what you're wanting to do, the time that you're wanting to put in, all those kind of things is probably not viable. So what options are available for you? So yeah, we actually start with that point. Where are we looking to get to? And then we profile where they're currently at.
Is it sometimes helpful to get that what they don't want to do first? Because sometimes when you ask someone, where do you want to go? What do you want to do with the business? They're like, well, I'm not really too sure what the end goal looks like. But then by diving into some of the, I don't want this, I don't want this, it can help shape it.
Yeah, so many businesses are started out of a passion or by accident. They've been doing something that's a bit of a hobby that they then thought, oh, we can commercialize this and monetize this, and eventually it's grown into something. So quite often when somebody starts a business, they're really not thinking of that long game. It's just, is this going to work? And they go day by day. So yeah, to be able to rule out those ideas and also to challenge those assumptions and get people to actually think, because whatever they're looking to do, the will significantly impact decisions that they're making today. So if they do know that they're building a business and they know eventually they want to build it to sell, there's key things that they need to be putting into place now that are very different, or some are very different, some are marginally different, depending on whether they're wanting to exit or if they think, actually, no, I definitely want to build this as a legacy business. I want it to have that family um, relationship and connection. And I've already spoken to my son, daughter, and they do want to take it on. The decisions are slightly different in terms of how you can structure it. And it's not imperative. It won't prevent you from doing things, but the the more clarity there is there, whether it's ruling things out or ruling things in, the easier it is to start building frameworks and putting structures in place.
I guess lots of business owners, like you said, they started out of a passion and things like that. And lots of people, and I've been in that position as well. When you say sort of what I'm looking to do long term, I'm like, well, actually, I'm just trying to pay the bills that are going to come in next week. And business owners therefore default to some of those quick fixes. But in fact, exactly like you said, this is like getting the foundations ready of a business. Because like you said, the decisions you make now, sometimes they can impact you a couple of years down the line. And when
Mm.
you're trying to maybe pass it to someone else or bring someone else in, you end up finding that the business owner is almost the bottleneck, or the way that they've done things needs to completely be undone. And that's quite a painful process. But I guess lots of business owners don't know about that. And that's where you come in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm generally bought in at a point where the owner or MD, CEO has recognized that they've hit a plateau. That's a positive engagement. They recognize that they've got to a point, they're plateauing, they've hit that ceiling in terms of where they are comfortable or confident in their ability and what happens next, or they're starting to notice there's a little bit of creaking, um, and thinking, I'm not really sure how to take this to the next stage now. Or I'm bought in at crisis point when the decline's already happened, or they're well on that slippery slope, and thinking, what do we do now? And sometimes that slope has already started. And imagine you're on that mudslide, you can't just stop the brakes and go, oh, okay, we know where we're at and we'll climb back up to the top really, really quickly. Sometimes you've just got to ride that wave. You've made those choices and those decisions, and you've got to wait until you get to the bottom to kind of regroup and say, do we climb back up the same hill that we've just slid down? Or do we look at another hill to climb up and hope there's something better? Either way, and I was actually at an event last week, and it was very much focused around exiteers and people that have exited companies. And I did ask this question: at what point do people recognize the need to bring somebody in? And although the answers change depending on the person, actually they all said that the value in bringing somebody in is A, to explore options. We don't know what we don't know, but
Yeah.
also to challenge those assumptions and ask those awkward questions that we're avoiding answering.
Yes, because quite often, like I said, the business owner becomes the bottleneck because of decisions they've made, and I love that sort of mudslide sort of analogy there, because yeah, very much it's much better to avoid it, because once you're on it, actually trying to stop is very, very tricky, and quite often you just have to ride it. What are some of the big mistakes that business owners make when starting a business that impacts them later in life?
Okay. So the one thing I'm always, always asked is, what are the biggest barriers to growth? So slightly different question, but hopefully it will answer both of them. And for me, it's around clarity.
Mm.
Every single aspect of the business has got different expectations, different requirements, different needs, different decisions that need to be made. And the more clear you can be around who you are as a business, what you stand for, what your purpose is, what you're looking to achieve, who your clients are, who your team is, what you need within your team, the more clear you can be, the easier it is to make those decisions. Particularly when you're starting a business, it's really challenging to get the balance right between just getting out there and doing it and moving forward. Because steps moving forward in those early stages are always positive. They might not always be in the right direction. You might need to pivot slightly or change that as you go, but actually making steps is hugely beneficial. But kind of balancing that with reflecting and reviewing, actually, what is it I'm trying to do? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? Where do I want to get to? And how am I actually going to do that? Because what I see quite often is people sit on one camp or the other. They either don't move forward at all, they do nothing because they're trying to make sure everything's perfect. They've got the perfect strategy, the perfect vision, the perfect everything, and they never actually do anything. They don't take those steps forward. Or people go headlong, running in all directions, get super, super busy, and they kind of tie themselves up in knots. So Yeah, clarity is always the biggest thing, the biggest barrier and the biggest asset if you can get there.
And I guess that's where someone coming in like yourself, to have that slightly outsider perspective, because as a business owner myself, I know that quite often, I'm so close to it, you can't see the wood from the trees or whatever the saying is, that actually I am just juggling and firefighting, and then I've got a big idea and we're going to run with that. And in fact, you almost need someone. I'm that person that you probably need someone to pull you back a little bit and take stock. But equally, I've got plenty of friends who, I've had conversations with them, and I say drive me mad. I mean that in the nicest possible way. They're like, oh, we're just going to wait until that bit's done, or I just want to update the photo on my website before I launch it. And it's like, just get going, mate. Like you're delaying yourself. And I can see why people get caught in both camps. And I guess
Yeah.
that's where the outside perspective really helps.
Yeah, and I always describe myself as the advocate for the business, and that really
Mm.
helps when there's multiple founders or multiple board members or a leadership team that are they work very much collaboratively together, because I don't have a bias to individuals. My priority is what's in the best interest of the business and giving the business a persona. So, who is it? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What do people want from it? What are the expectations? What does it need from other people? How does it grow and evolve and develop? So, I think from that perspective, when I lead with that and kind of explain that that is my role is to make sure that we're making decisions in the best interest of the business, but also to make sure that it is aligned with those people that are instrumental in actually doing that, that it all kind of works nicely together. So yeah, and challenging those assumptions. Like we said, we don't know what we don't know.
Mm.
And quite often we have a bias towards things that we are more comfortable with, we are happier with, we're more confident with. And that is generally where our focus goes. So bringing somebody in, whether it's a coach, whether it's a consultant, depending on what it is that you actually want from them, be really clear what you want from them, how they're going to add value to the business, how they're going to be able to impact the business. Um, but actually letting them challenge you, let them question you, because it's the quickest way to grow.
Yes. Do you find that in businesses where there have been either multiple founders or different people have been brought in, and there's now a board, or multiple directors, that actually one of the bottlenecks is everyone has different ideas and maybe is thinking of their opinion rather than, exactly like you said, the advocate for the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I am working with a leadership team, I will go through a mindset assessment with them. So, what that looks at is their appetite for risk, their approach to change, their communication style, their leadership style, and their decision making. And the way the assessment is structured is it gets them to reflect on themselves individually, but also their perception of the company collectively. So we're able to kind of plot that and heat map it to say, well, you're actually really risk adverse and you are very much a risk taker. You're constantly going to clash. So what that enables us to do is then look at different areas of the business and put some boundaries in place and tolerances in place to kind of say, well, this aspect of the business you will lead on and you will have accountability, and we will put boundaries in place that we've set those parameters now and those guidelines now, that if we're struggling to make that decision, these are the guided principles that we follow, but ultimately you will have that final say. But in a different area of the business, it might be somebody else. So we set aside some time to actually reflect and evaluate different areas of the business and who is the most appropriate person to actually make that final call. Um, and that could be innovation. You don't want somebody that's completely risk adverse to be accountable for being innovative, because the likelihood is you're not actually going to be that innovative, because there's always a reason not to do it, not to try something new. Likewise, you don't want somebody that's a massive risk taker having total responsibility of the finances,
Yeah.
because that can get you in a mess as well. So quite often we don't set aside that time to assess what's actually needed and how do we combat those challenges when they may come into fruition. And another area from when there's multiple leaderships or partners, shareholder agreements.
Mm.
Early stage, you come together, there's so much trust, you've got this shared vision, you're really excited about what you're doing, you trust one another, and you think, oh, we don't need a shareholder agreement. And then a little bit further down the line, things start to materialize and you start to have different visions, different expectations, personal lives change. And it's really difficult then to have those awkward conversations, because quite often you don't want to part ways socially or personally, but you need to professionally. How do you have those conversations? So yeah, big tip, shareholder agreements if you are entering into partnerships with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in that situation, and in fact, it was really interesting you saying about mindset there and things like that, because I think one of the bottlenecks was me getting out of my head. So, I started the business. I had some other directors come in. We had a shareholder agreement, but even though it wasn't then just my business, and in fact, the business was a separate entity, in my head it was still my baby, and I know that caused some frustrations for everyone, and I take responsibility for that, and in the end we moved in different directions, but actually on a personal level stayed friends. That's no issue there, but it was having some of those bits in place was really key. But equally, just understanding when actually things aren't working out on a business sense, that actually we are all better going in separate ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting you saying about your baby, because I use the phrase so often that I'm often telling people their baby's ugly and it's because of them. And it really doesn't go down that well. So it's it's not always the most pleasant introduction or engagement initially, because you are having to have those really difficult conversations. And some people are more open and willing to have those conversations than others. And again, coming back to partnerships and multiple board members, some are quite open and want to bring external counsel in, and others are very, very averse to it. And it's very clear they don't want somebody else in that room. And I think it's really important to convey that I'm not there to judge. I'm not there to have an opinion on what's happened or how things have happened. The focus is purely on understanding where we're at and where we're wanting to get to, and what's the most effective route possible. And a bit like a sat nav, when you turn your sat nav on, quite often it gives you multiple routes that are options.
Mm.
You might want to avoid tolls, you might want to avoid motorways, you might want to take the scenic route. There's different options depending on what you need. And it's the same with the business. Quite often there's multiple ways to get to where you're wanting to get to, but it's understanding. You'll say, I love an analogy.
Right,
Or
but I'm the same. I love an analogy because it just helps simplify some of the complex parts of business, because business is complicated from the fact that we're never really taught how to run a business, and I joke they're my baby, and it was because it was built out of passion. There were things I was good at, so therefore I started doing them, and I was getting paid for them, and it was all exciting.
Yeah.
But then trying to separate that from trying to grow and scale a business, which is a separate entity to you, it is a mindset block for a lot of people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. There are so many different areas and it is continually evolving. It's continually growing. Every industry has got its nuances. Every industry has got its governance, its compliance, its health and safety requirements, which are continually changing. There's people that their role is to find new health and safety legislations. That's what they are paid to do. So there will
Mm.
always be new things coming through. Um, and that's from a compliance perspective. When you then add social expectations and values and culture and how people are evolving, from a personal perspective, and how you have to layer the business in that way, It's absolutely a whole of the minefield. And what often happens is when business owners think, I'm going to cut costs, I'm going to do it all myself, they very quickly lose sight of why they started in the first place. They spend so much time, energy, resources trying to do the bits they're not particularly familiar with. So it takes a lot longer. It doesn't always get them where they're wanting to go. So they're having to, like you said at the beginning, unpick, unravel, go back a little bit, try again in a new direction. And meanwhile, they're not doing the bit that started the business in the first place, either the passion or the revenue generating area of the business. They're tied up doing all the other things. So, yeah, looking at what those key priorities are and how you can optimize and strategize to get the most effective route. Most business owners haven't got a degree in business. They haven't like spent years researching and upskilling in business. They've done it in their field. And that's brilliant. I'm not there trying to tell you how to run your business or be an expert in your field. I'm there to kind of say, well, what areas of the business need your focus now? And how do you do that rather than focusing on areas that aren't going to really have a big impact yet and ignore the bits that are?
Yeah, I mean, talking here, someone might listen and think, oh, they're really putting me off running a business. But actually, growing a business and running your own business is
Or-
a fantastic thing to do. But I think it's understanding why you want to do it and how is best to do it. Because a lot of the influence, I guess, we get, or maybe the perception of what running a business is, comes from social media posts and Instagram and LinkedIn and things like that. And sometimes that isn't a real perception of what it's like in the trenches, as I often say. It's quite different. It's not as glamorous as we may perceive when we start. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And actually, this week alone, I've been having the conversation with my son. He announced the other night, I want to start a business. And he'd seen a TikTok or an Instagram thing, and it was the caption was, "Are you a bored teenager that wants to make money?" So they clearly know their audience.
Yep.
Um, but when I explained to him cost of goods and everything that goes into running a business, within half an hour, he was like, "Yeah, I'm done with that. I don't want a business anymore." And I think this happens across the board is people think they're in an organization and think, I can do this better. They've got a passion, they've got a skill, they've got a trade. And quite often they can. But actually, there's so much around actually running a business that takes so much time and energy. Simon Sinek, with his Start With Why, is fundamental. If you are starting a business because you want to make money, forget it. Because we all know the first few years of of creating and starting a business, the money does not roll in. Some people are lucky and it might work that way, but generally starting a business because you've got a purpose, because you've got a mission of something that you want to achieve, you've got a bigger vision of why you are starting your business. Why do you feel you can do it better? What impact is that going to have on your audience, on your customers, on your client base, on the industry? What is that wider purpose behind that? You're not going to get out of bed because of the money in the morning because it's just not there all the time.
No.
And it might be 1 month and then it's down the next month. And you are trying to run your business and create revenue. They're two separate things quite often in a lot of businesses. Um, and I think understanding that and being really clear on why you need to do this for yourself. Um, yeah, that is a key reflection in those early days, I think.
Wanting to run a business because you've got that passion and you want to solve a problem. I always say, solve a problem for your customers. The money will then follow. But if you're going right, how can we make money? You're starting it the wrong way round. And you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to earn some more money, but quite often it's a short-term motivator. And most of us, certainly people like myself who aren't brilliant with money, we will live to our means and we never really quite have enough, because it doesn't matter how much you earn, you end up spending it. So you've got to have something else that, like you say, gets you up in the morning, and money, chances are, won't be it.
No, it can often be the biggest demotivator because if you've started the business to generate income and you're not generating that income, the impact that has on you can be significant. So all of a sudden, everything else becomes harder. The motivation becomes harder. The resources become more deprived. Your passion diminishes. Your mental health significantly diminishes because you're chasing the money. And I'd absolutely agree. If you've got a passion and you've got a purpose and you've got a clear idea of what problem you are solving and why and for who, that's what keeps you motivated. That's what gives you that drive. That's what gives you that ambition to keep going because you're thinking, okay, the money's not quite there yet, but I am making a difference. I might only have one or two clients, but I know that it's having a significant impact on them. And I can get the testimonials from that. I can build the case studies from that. Those two clients can turn into four clients that can turn into six clients. Might go back down to four at some point because the market changes. But that's what will keep you motivated is thinking, right, I am really having an impact here. I can see the change that's come in and I know where this is going and the money will follow. But if you're leading with the money, it's a tough game.
It certainly is. And you mentioned there how it impacts sort of your personal well-being and your mental health. And I think we see that a lot. I mean, I often tell the story. The reason behind the podcast is that there's nothing wrong with ambition, but if it's just going to lead to burnout, what's the point? So you've got to have some of those bits in place. Do you think we are having a slight reverse on the initial hustle culture that we saw? Because actually, we've realized so many people end up burning out, or is it the truth? And sometimes I think this actually, those first few years, they're going to be tough. You've just got to accept that actually you are going to have to work lots of hours and you're probably not going to get loads of money from it.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a bigger divide at the moment. I think we've kind of swung one way to the other, and I think we're kind of like a low swing in the middle at the moment where people are being more transparent and honest about the build and all these overnight millionaires when they're saying we've done this and we've done that and all of a sudden actually when you dig into that story there's generally a lot more history than what's
Mm.
visible and what you can actually see. And I also think people are there's more transparency and honesty in some areas, but I do definitely think there's a huge, particularly around social media, lean towards this is really easy. If you just do this, if you just do that. And unfortunately, I think this is where there's a lot of organizations that are giving coaching and consultancy a bad rep at the moment because they're promising the dream and they're promising that they can deliver on if you follow us and you buy into our mentorship program and invest a significant amount of money in us, we will guarantee your turnover will reach X. But they don't really talk about margins and profit and profitability. Turnover is one metric, but it's not the true story. Um, and I definitely think people are buying into the dream in a lot of
Yeah.
instances. But I think there are more people coming forward now to say, actually, this is the realization. And if you're entering into this because you think you can instantly get a perfect work life balance, it's unrealistic. And I think people need to be more aware of actually what does a work life balance look like for you? What does
Yeah.
that mean? Because you're very, very unlikely to be able to work for 2 hours a day and turn over 50 grand a week. There
Yeah.
are people claiming that's possible, and maybe it is for some people, but they've not done it overnight. And following their simple framework for a week is certainly not going to help you achieve that.
No. You said, you've only, I say more recently become self-employed. So how's that journey been for you?
Yeah. So mine, I'm renowned and always have been a bit of a risk taker. I don't always follow the rules. And I was one of those people last year that did hit burnout. There was an awful lot of things happening. And it was actually clients through my previous role that were saying, why are you not doing this on your own? And I'd had a weekend and I'd reflected on certain things and as I said, a lot was happening, and I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I'd got my purpose. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the impact that I wanted to have on people. And I just thought, let's just go for it. Um, so yeah, I literally just woke up on the Monday morning and called my MD and said, yeah, I'm done. I won't be back after Christmas. And that was November last year. So coming up to a year nearly. And so far, touch wood, it's been an experience. It's
Yeah.
definitely helped to have that why. What is it that I'm trying to achieve? I think I've been in a unique situation given the nature of the work that I do. I'm surrounded by business owners and entrepreneurs and have been for 10, 15 years now. So I wasn't I was fully aware and had my eyes wide open to how challenging it can be, how difficult
Mm,
it can be. But that's not to say I haven't made my own mistakes. And I am very much more towards the I want to get everything perfect before I go out. I don't like the feeling of being exposed. I'm getting better at that. But yeah, that's definitely been my biggest barrier is actually having those conversations with people and then actually closing those conversations has probably been my biggest barrier because, like you say, there's a lot of these conversations and a lot of people recognize the need. Um, but yeah, we're still here. We're 10 months in. So
you're still going strong. There's an interesting bit there about sort of that vulnerability and and that's been such a almost like a buzz, hasn't it, that be vulnerable, be yourself. And quite often we see it on social media, and it's almost sometimes I think the people who've already made it in our eyes, when they're vulnerable about what it was like 5, 10 years ago, you can resonate, but feel like, yeah, but you're okay now. And it's sort of like, I don't know if I want to be vulnerable because I haven't made it and again, when I say made it, this is a perception that most of us have. It's all just, regardless of what your business is turning over, it's probably just some extra noughts. There's still some of the same problems, the same stresses, the same decisions that have to be made. But it's tricky when you're feeling you're not at that level to be vulnerable about how it's actually going.
yeah, try positioning yourself as a business consultant.
Yeah.
Everybody just expects you to have all of the answers. Um, and I think that's one of the things that I am very often have that comment, whether it's in a testimonial or a conversation, is that authenticity of I don't claim to have all the answers. I don't claim to know everything about everything. And I am very transparent. If it is something that I say, actually, do you know what? I'm not the best person to answer this. I will absolutely reach out. I've got a fantastic network around me that are experts in various fields. Um, and the way I explain it is I'm the nucleus. The strategy is the nucleus. It's that central point, and it's really what everything boils down to. It's that clarity, um, looking at the breadth of the business. And I always say to a business, you need to own your own strategy. You need to be really clear on exactly who you are for all areas of the business, because if not, when you engage with a marketing agency or a financial consultant or a technical solutions provider, they will create a strategy with their provision at the center of that. And that's when you then end up with conflicting information, conflicting advice, just things that just don't work. So, what I kind of say is your strategy is the nucleus. Your data is like the neutrons that go around that deliver the data to the different tentacles of all the different facets of the business. But know your strategy, be really clear on what that is. And then everything else can kind of feed off that, because the purpose of building your strategy is to really dig deep and really strengthen those foundations of who you are as a business and what you're wanting to do. And if somebody's wanting, here we go, with another analogy now, sorry. If you're looking to build a house, you don't just get a builder to come in and just start laying bricks. You engage with an architect, you look at planning, you look at structural engineers, You dig out the foundations, you look at the depth of the foundations that's needed based on the size of the house that you're looking to develop. Um, and those are all the things that you really need to be doing. That is your strategy. How are you going to build that house? The same as if you've already got a house and you're looking at extending it, you still need to go back through that process. What's there? What's feasible? What's viable? How do we do it? Do we have the right people at the right time? Equally, that's the other thing, prioritization. There's no point bringing in an electrician if you haven't done the foundations yet.
No.
And I have this conversation with marketing experts all the time when they go, "Oh, thank God you're on this," because quite often people will engage with a marketing agency who are really good at what they do. And they're saying, "We know we will get results for you, but you don't have the infrastructure in place to support it. So actually, we're going to do you a disservice because we know we're good at what we do. We are brilliant at it, but the business can't support it when we start getting the return on that investment. So it's wasted money."
Yes. I love that idea of, I love those analogies. I used to use them quite a bit when, if it was building a website, I'd say to someone, what sort of thing do you like? And they'd show me something and I'd be like, okay, this is like when you're buying a car. What you've pointed out is that beautiful two-seater sports car. It looks lovely. It goes really fast. Yes, everyone is going to be impressed by it. But hang on, you've got 3 kids and you like to go surfing at the weekend. Like, that's not the right vehicle for you. So
Yeah.
you've got to understand it's not just about, well, yeah, that's a brilliant car. What are you actually trying to achieve and what do you actually need? And that is a much better way to start it and look at it rather than just, being a bit of a magpie and going, oh, that's shiny. I'll take that.
Yeah, and continuing that analogy, it's like they've identified a Ferrari that they want. And you're like, of course you want a Ferrari, but realistically, right now, it doesn't suit your needs, your requirements, your budget, anything. So let's use your focus budget. We'll get something that looks really good. Then we'll commission that or soup it up or whatever. My son will be cringing at this bit. He's a big car fan. But put your strategy in place. What's the next car after that? What do you need to do?
Yeah.
How do you, at what point do you trade it in? Is the best option to get a HP or PCP, or are you buying it outright? Because what will help you get to that next step? And again, this is what we look for with our strategy. If you're wanting to get to that Ferrari point, what cars do we need in the meantime? How do we finance those cars? When do we identify at what point to sell them? At what point to buy them? Do we buy it with the bells and whistles on it because it's going to be more saleable? Or do we buy it more basic because it's going to allow us to retain the value now? So yeah, it's not saying you can't ever have a Ferrari. It's saying that's an awesome dream to have, and we will work towards that. But quite often people go, if I can't have a Ferrari, I'm not bothered. I'll
Yeah.
stop now.
To finish off today, because I've actually loved our conversation, if a business owner's listening, what's one thing they should, first of all, just consider? First of all, is it that why? Is it because you've mentioned that a
Yeah,
couple of times, or is there something else business owners need to understand at this stage, wherever they are?
yeah. For me, it always comes back to clarity. What are they looking to achieve? Do they have any idea of where they're looking to get to? If they're able to say, right, in 10 years, I want to be at this point. I want to sell the company. I want to retire. I want to have a legacy business. I want to, some people, particularly now with social value, they're moving into wanting cooperatives or management buyouts, things like that. So there's different options available. But start thinking about it. Start forward planning, because I do speak to a lot of businesses that say, I want to retire next year and sell the business. They've spent 35 years building it and there is nothing to sell. There are no assets to
Mm,
sell. And that's heartbreaking because you're just having to say to them, there isn't anything.
no.
Um, so yeah, reflect on where you're at, consider where you want to get to, and be realistic with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Do you know how to even frame that, how to articulate that, how to look at that? And if not, speak to somebody, whether it's a friend, a colleague, your team. There's lots of support networks, or reach out to somebody that's a coach or a consultant. Look at what you need from them.
Maddie, thank you so much for your insights today. I've absolutely loved our conversation. I wish you all the best with the future of your business. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
you're going to do well. You've got a great head on you, and it's refreshing to see that your passion for other people's businesses, while at the same time trying to grow yours. So, yeah, all the best for the future with that.
Thanks so much, Matt. Lovely speaking to you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.